What if the milk you've been pouring into your morning coffee for decades, the same milk you once gave your children, the same one your parents swore by, is now quietly undermining your health in ways you never imagined? What if something as small as a single glass a day could be increasing your risk of heart disease, memory loss, brittle bones, or chronic fatigue? And what if, just as quietly, a small, intentional change in your daily milk choice could do the exact opposite? Strengthen your heart, clear your mind, calm your digestion, and even help you sleep better? Sounds too simple to be true, right? But the truth is, when we pass the age of 60, our bodies no longer respond to food the way they did in our 30s or 40s. What was once a harmless indulgence can now become a hidden danger. And what once seemed unnecessary, like switching to an unfamiliar type of milk, can become a powerful act of self-care. Today, I want to take you on a journey through the reality behind the most common milks found in senior diets. We'll explore 3 that are surprisingly harmful, even though they're still promoted as healthy. And we'll discover 3 alternatives that don't just nourish, but actually support healthy aging from the inside out. I've spent over 2 decades studying the aging body, not just through clinical research or nutritional science, but through stories. The quiet stories of seniors who came into my clinic with aching knees, blurry thoughts, heart palpitations, or just a feeling of being off, only to find the problem wasn't always in a pill bottle. Sometimes, it was in the milk carton. By the end of this video, you'll walk away not only knowing what to avoid and what to choose, but also why it matters, and how this small, often overlooked shift could very well be one of the most important changes you make in your later years. So, whether you're 65, 75, or still thriving at 85, I invite you to stay with me. Let's explore what's really in your glass. Because the next sip you take could shape the rest of your years. But before we go further, I'd love your help. If you believe in the power of everyday wisdom, and you want to live your later years with more clarity, energy, and strength, I invite you to support our channel, Daily Elder Advice. Just click subscribe and turn on that bell so you'll never miss a new guide crafted especially for older adults. If you've already made one positive change in your diet this year, tell us what it was in the comments. I personally read every single story. Let's learn from each other. Let's grow stronger together. Now, shall we open the fridge and find out what your milk is really doing to your body? Let's begin with the first glass, the one that's breaking more hearts than you might think. The first, whole milk, the silent heartbreaker. It's hard to forget the sound of a clinking spoon against a tall glass of milk. For many of us, whole milk brings back vivid memories, a childhood breakfast, a cold glass on a summer day, or warm milk before bed. It was a symbol of strength, of wholesomeness. Back then, no one questioned it. Milk was milk. But time changes everything, including the body that receives that milk. And today, if you're over 65, that same creamy, comforting drink could be one of the quietest threats to your heart, your joints, and even your ability to live independently. Let's break down why. Whole milk contains over 4.5 grams of saturated fat per 8-ounce cup. That's a hefty load of fat for a body that past age 60 is working with a slower metabolism, stiffer arteries, and a cardiovascular system already under strain. Here's what happens. 1. Saturated fat increases LDL cholesterol, the kind known as bad cholesterol. It builds up in your arteries, narrowing them over time and increasing your risk of hypertension, stroke, and heart attack. 2. Whole milk is calorie-dense, which can easily contribute to unnoticed weight gain, especially in seniors with reduced mobility. 3. Its richness can worsen insulin resistance, especially in older adults with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. 4. For those with kidney concerns, the fat content adds another layer of burden, complicating management of chronic disease. 5. Lastly, lactose intolerance tends to increase with age, which means your body may no longer digest milk properly, resulting in bloating, discomfort, and gut inflammation. In short, that nostalgic glass might be comforting to the soul, but corrosive to the system. According to a landmark study by Harvard researchers, Older adults who consumed whole milk daily were found to have an 18% higher risk of cardiovascular events than those who chose lower fat or plant-based options. That's not an abstract statistic. That's your walk becoming shorter, your chest feeling tighter, your independence slowly being chipped away. And yet, millions of seniors continue drinking whole milk every morning, believing it's keeping them strong. Let me tell you about Walter, a 76-year-old widower from Oregon. Walter was proud of his routine. Early to rise, newspaper at 6:30, coffee with whole milk at 7, then a brisk walk around the block. He believed that his active lifestyle canceled out any minor dietary indulgences. But slowly, changes crept in. He started skipping his walks at first from mild chest pressure, then because he just didn't have the energy. His sleep grew restless. His legs ached more than usual. One day, while tying his shoes, he experienced sudden dizziness and collapsed. At the hospital, the doctors didn't find anything dramatic, no heart attack, no stroke. But what they did find was concerning: high LDL cholesterol, borderline diabetes, elevated blood pressure, and signs of early-stage heart strain. Walter was shocked. When his daughter helped him review his habits, they noticed one thing he never questioned: the daily whole milk in his coffee and cereal. It had been there for 50 years. 6 months after switching to a lighter milk, adjusting his diet, and managing his cholesterol, Walter was back on his feet. Literally. His walks returned. His energy improved. His blood pressure stabilized. It wasn't about giving up tradition. It was about updating it to match the reality of his aging body. Why this hits so many without warning? The danger of whole milk isn't that it causes immediate problems. It's that it operates like a slow leak, silently eroding health from the inside while leaving you feeling just a bit off. That's why most seniors don't catch it. They attribute the fatigue to aging, the bloating to something I ate, the joint pain to weather or arthritis. But in reality, it's the daily repetition of that high-fat milk that builds up over time. And the tricky part is this: whole milk still gets recommended in many settings. Some older health guides promote it as natural and calcium-rich. While technically true, those benefits don't outweigh the dangers when you consider how an aging body metabolizes saturated fats and dairy sugars, especially when there are safer, better, equally creamy options available. Let's be honest, giving up whole milk isn't easy for everyone. It's a comfort food, tied to memories. But here's the good news. You don't have to give up the experience of milk. You just had to upgrade the ingredient. Instead of whole milk, consider switching to unsweetened almond milk for a light, heart-friendly option. Fortified oat milk for creaminess, bone strength, and gut comfort. Fermented soy milk for full protein, hormone balance, and brain benefits. And if you're not ready to fully let go of dairy, try low-fat lactose-free milk as a gentle transitional step. It's less inflammatory and easier on digestion. The second, sweetened condensed milk, the sugary trap for your brain and body. There's something irresistibly nostalgic about sweetened condensed milk. Just the sight of that thick, creamy ribbon slowly pouring into coffee or drizzling over sticky rice can send many of us back to our grandmother's kitchen, where love was measured in spoonfuls of sugar and warmth came in every bite. For many seniors, it's more than just a treat. It's a memory. But memory, ironically, is the very thing this syrupy delight may quietly erode, along with your metabolic health, brain clarity, immune system, and even your sleep. The truth is, sweetened condensed milk is one of the most deceptively dangerous ingredients in the modern senior diet. And most people have no idea what a single tablespoon can do, let alone a daily habit. Let's uncover the sweet truth that nobody wants to hear. 1 tablespoon of sweetened condensed milk contains about 10 to 12 grams of added sugar. That's nearly half the American Heart Association's recommended daily limit for added sugars in adults in a single spoon. Now ask yourself, when you use condensed milk, do you stop at 1 tablespoon? Most people don't, especially when adding it to morning coffee, 2 to 3 spoons. Tea, 1 to 2 spoons. Porridge, desserts, or fruit. Traditional recipes layered in cakes, flans, puddings. That means many seniors are consuming 30 to 50 grams of sugar per day from this one source alone. And for aging bodies, especially those with slowed metabolism or borderline insulin resistance, this is a ticking time bomb. Let's get scientific for a moment. When you consume a concentrated dose of sugar, especially in liquid or semi-liquid form, several things happen quickly. 1. Blood sugar spikes dramatically. 2. Insulin floods the bloodstream to compensate. 3. Inflammation increases throughout the body. 4. Cortisol, stress hormone, rises, especially if you're sedentary. 5. The pancreas works harder, leading to eventual insulin resistance. 6. The brain, which is sensitive to glucose, experiences oxidative stress. 7. Over time, this leads to memory loss, mood disorders, and even neurodegenerative changes. In fact, many neuroscientists now refer to Alzheimer's as type 3 diabetes, a disease of sugar-damaged neurons. What's most alarming? These effects don't take years to appear. They begin subtly as brain fog, forgetfulness, word-finding difficulty, or irritability, and accumulate until the damage becomes permanent. And it all might begin with a sweet cup of coffee. Sweetened condensed milk doesn't just raise blood sugar. It affects how you feel every day. Here are some sneaky signs that sugar overload from condensed milk may be affecting you. Mid-morning fatigue or fog, even after a full night's sleep. Forgetting names, words, or simple tasks. Feeling bloated or heavy after breakfast. Irritability or low mood during the day. Cravings for more sugar or caffeine by afternoon. Feeling unsteady or off despite otherwise normal labs. These symptoms are often dismissed as normal aging, but they may actually be early signs of metabolic inflammation. Sugar doesn't just stress your mind, it strains your heart. Regular consumption of high sugar ingredients like condensed milk has been linked to increased arterial stiffness, higher triglyceride levels, increased risk of metabolic syndrome, elevated blood pressure, increased plaque buildup in coronary arteries. When combined with other age-related vulnerabilities, like slower circulation, less physical activity, and thinner blood vessels, the effect becomes magnified. In short, condensed milk is heart-unfriendly in every way. Another area where condensed milk wreaks havoc: your gut microbiome. Sugar feeds bad bacteria and yeast, upsetting the natural balance of your intestinal flora. This leads to gas and bloating, irregular bowel movements, weakened immunity, increased inflammation, poor nutrient absorption. For seniors already dealing with sensitive digestion or constipation, adding concentrated sugar makes things worse, not better. Ironically, the comfort of a rich, creamy treat often leads to digestive discomfort hours later. If you love the flavor and comfort of condensed milk, you're not alone. But there are ways to honor the tradition without sacrificing your health. Here are a few healthier swaps. Unsweetened coconut cream with a pinch of stevia, rich, creamy, and low glycemic. Fermented soy milk warmed with cinnamon, satisfying and protein-rich. Calcium-fortified oat milk with nutmeg or vanilla, naturally sweet. No added sugar. If you must sweeten, use 1/2 teaspoon of raw honey or monk fruit for a safer option. Sweetened condensed milk isn't evil. It's just outdated. It was created in a time when calories were scarce and refrigeration was rare. But today, it's a relic of a sugar-heavy era that doesn't serve the aging body. A small amount, once in a while, won't ruin your health. But a daily dose, even if only 1 spoonful, could be draining your energy, aging your brain, stressing your heart, and disturbing your digestion. You don't have to give up joy, but you do have to give up the habits that rob you of vitality. The third, rice milk, the weakest link in your golden years. Rice milk. It sounds gentle, doesn't it? Light, easy. a plant-based alternative free from the heaviness of dairy, the sweetness of condensed milk, or the allergens in soy. It's the go-to choice for many seniors looking for a non-dairy milk that won't cause trouble. In fact, I've met dozens of older adults who told me, "I switched to rice milk because I thought it was the safest option. It's so light on my stomach. I'm avoiding dairy, so rice milk feels good." But here's the uncomfortable truth. Rice milk is often the weakest nutritional link in a senior's diet, providing very little of what the aging body needs, and quietly delivering more harm than most people suspect. Let's unpack why this innocent-seeming milk may be quietly working against your strength, your bones, and even your organs. At its core, rice milk is made by blending white rice with water, sometimes adding sweeteners, thickeners, or fortifying agents like calcium or B12. It's thin and light, naturally dairy and soy-free, mild in flavor, low in fat and protein, which sounds great until you look closer. Here's what's missing in a typical glass of rice milk. Protein, often less than 1 gram per serving, a serious deficit for aging muscles. Healthy fats, essential for hormone production and cognitive function. Calcium, and less fortified, not naturally present in high levels. Fiber, very low. Complex nutrients, unlike nuts, seeds, or legumes. Rice has very little to offer beyond carbs. For seniors over 65, this is a problem. Why? Because after age 60, your body begins losing 1 to 2% of muscle mass per year if not supported by adequate protein. That loss leads to weakened legs, poor balance, increased fall risk, slower recovery from injury. A glass of rice milk adds almost nothing to prevent that. And unlike other plant-based milks like soy or almond, rice milk doesn't nourish, it just fills space. Another hidden issue with rice milk is its high glycemic index. Because it's made from refined white rice, rice milk causes rapid spikes in blood sugar, even more so than some sugary drinks. This is especially problematic for seniors with pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes, those with low energy and mood swings, anyone trying to maintain stable energy throughout the day. You don't have to give up non-dairy milk, but you do need to choose smarter. Here are 3 far superior alternatives to rice milk for seniors. 1. Fermented soy milk. Complete protein with all 9 amino acids. Supports brain, bone, and muscle health. Easier digestion thanks to fermentation. 2. Unsweetened almond milk. Heart-healthy fats. Rich in vitamin E for brain protection. Low glycemic and gut-friendly. 3. Calcium-fortified oat milk. Naturally sweet but low GI. Contains beta-glucan for heart support. Helps sleep and digestion. Each of these options offers what rice milk lacks: true support for the aging body. Rice milk isn't evil. It's just neutral at best and quietly harmful at worst. In our golden years, we can't afford neutral. Every bite, every sip must count. Now that we've looked closely at the 3 types of milk that can quietly undermine your health: whole milk, sweetened condensed milk, and rice milk, the pattern is clear. What once seemed harmless or even nourishing may no longer suit the needs of an aging body. These familiar choices, though comforting or convenient, can slowly contribute to heart strain, blood sugar imbalances, weakened bones, and mental fog. But here's the good news: this isn't where the story ends. In fact, it's where it begins. Because just as the wrong milk can quietly work against you, the right milk can actively support your strength, sharpen your memory, and bring peace to your digestion, heart, and sleep. Up next, we'll explore 3 powerful milk alternatives that don't just avoid harm, they actually help rebuild, protect, and restore your well-being, 1 glass at a time. Let's turn the page and begin with a daily drink that supports your muscles, your mind, and your future. The first, fermented soy milk. strength, balance, and brain power in a glass. Among the best milk alternatives for seniors, fermented soy milk stands out as a powerful ally for aging bodies. Unlike regular soy milk, the fermentation process breaks down proteins for easier digestion, enhances the absorption of beneficial isoflavones, and introduces probiotics that support gut health and immune function. This milk provides complete plant-based protein, helping preserve muscle mass and prevent age-related muscle loss. It also supports brain function, thanks to the presence of isoflavones that mimic mild estrogen activity, offering protection for memory, mood, and cognitive clarity, especially in postmenopausal women. Additionally, fermented soy milk is heart-friendly, naturally cholesterol-free, and can help lower LDL levels. It's gentle on digestion, can improve sleep through its tryptophan and probiotic content, and offers a satisfying, nourishing option whether enjoyed warm or cold. For older adults seeking a simple, daily step towards strength, balance, and better health, fermented soy milk is a smart, restorative choice. The second, unsweetened almond milk, light on the body, powerful for the heart. Unsweetened almond milk is one of the most heart-healthy and digestion-friendly milk alternatives available for older adults. Unlike dairy milk, it contains no cholesterol and almost no saturated fat, making it a smart choice for those managing high blood pressure, elevated cholesterol, or a history of cardiovascular disease. Almond milk is naturally rich in monounsaturated fats, the kind proven to support heart health and lower LDL, bad cholesterol. It also provides a generous dose of vitamin E, a powerful antioxidant that helps protect cells from oxidative stress, especially in the brain, where it plays a critical role in supporting memory and slowing cognitive decline. For seniors struggling with digestive discomfort, almond milk offers a gentle alternative. It's lactose-free, light on the stomach, and easy to digest, which helps reduce bloating, gas, and other symptoms often caused by dairy. When unsweetened, almond milk is also very low in calories, typically around 30 to 40 calories per cup, making it ideal for weight management, a crucial factor for reducing joint strain and maintaining mobility in older age. Its mild flavor pairs well with oatmeal, coffee, or smoothies, and when consumed regularly, it contributes to better heart rhythm, metabolic stability, and digestive ease. It's important to choose the unsweetened version, as sweetened almond milk often contains added sugars that can offset its benefits. Pure, unsweetened almond milk is a simple, elegant, and powerful way to support overall wellness after 60, quietly nourishing the heart, protecting the brain, and keeping the body light and balanced from the inside out. The third, calcium-fortified oat milk, comfort for the bones, calm for the heart. Calcium-fortified oat milk is one of the most complete and senior-friendly milk alternatives available today, especially for those seeking gentle support for bone strength, cardiovascular health, digestion, and emotional balance. Naturally mild and slightly sweet in flavor, oat milk is made from whole oats and water, which gives it a creamy texture and smooth consistency that many older adults find comforting. What sets fortified oat milk apart is its addition of calcium and vitamin D, two nutrients that become increasingly essential with age. As bone density naturally declines after 60, the risk of fractures and osteoporosis increases significantly, particularly in women. Oat milk fortified with calcium and vitamin D provides critical support for maintaining bone structure, helping reduce the chance of debilitating falls and mobility loss. Beyond bone health, oat milk offers impressive benefits for the heart. It contains beta-glucan, a soluble fiber that binds to excess cholesterol in the gut and helps flush it out of the body. Regular consumption of beta-glucan has been shown to lower LDL cholesterol levels and improve overall lipid profiles, making oat milk a smart choice for those managing cardiovascular conditions or simply trying to protect heart function over time. Additionally, oat milk is low in saturated fat, completely lactose-free, and generally well tolerated by those with digestive sensitivities. making it a reliable daily option for those who experience bloating, gas, or irregularity from dairy. Another unique benefit of oat milk is its gentle calming effect on the nervous system. Thanks to its naturally occurring complex carbohydrates, oat milk can help regulate blood sugar more evenly than high glycemic dairy alternatives, contributing to more stable energy and mood throughout the day. When consumed warm in the evening, oat milk may also support better sleep due to its magnesium content and comforting texture, making it a natural addition to a nighttime routine. For older adults seeking a plant-based milk that truly nourishes multiple systems, bones, heart, digestion, and even emotional health, calcium-fortified oat milk offers a simple yet deeply effective solution. Just 1 cup a day can contribute meaningfully to stronger bones, steadier energy, improved cholesterol, and a more relaxed body and mind. As we grow older, the decisions that seem smallest, like the milk we choose each day, often carry the greatest weight. What once felt familiar or harmless may now quietly drain our strength, cloud our minds, or burden our hearts. But aging is not about giving things up. It's about choosing more wisely, more intentionally, with the body we have today in mind. By letting go of milks that no longer serve us and embracing nourishing options like fermented soy milk, unsweetened almond milk, and calcium-fortified oat milk, we give ourselves the gift of vitality, clarity, and resilience. Because in this season of life, every sip can be an act of healing, and every glass, a quiet investment in the years still ahead. If this video gave you something to think about, or perhaps inspired you to make one small change, we'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments. Which milk are you ready to swap starting today? Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell so you never miss another guide crafted just for your health and happiness. And if you know someone else who deserves stronger bones, a clearer mind, or a healthier heart, send this video their way. Because wisdom is a gift best shared.